The implication there is quite clear. He's implying that atheists are just dishonest or stubborn, and that we just really don't want to believe in God, and so we're just going to find a reason. That, I'm sorry to say, is despicable. And this is where my cordiality ends. I'm not going to listen to that crap, and it is crap. It's complete nonsense. Hello everybody, you are listening to the Magic Skeptic, aka Magic Dara, and you are all most welcome to another episode of A Magician's Thoughts. So guys, as an atheist and a skeptic primarily, I spend a lot of my spare time reading about religion, studying it, and watching YouTube videos and so forth. I mean, if you weren't aware, I actually have a master's degree in the study of comparative religions. Now, I don't share that with you to try and, be the big dick and try to impress you and point out how great I am. I merely share that with you because I think some of you at this point have gotten the wrong impression of me. You view me as a kind of a Christopher Hitchens-styled atheist who thinks that religion poisons everything, and that's absolutely not the case. I actually love the study of religions. I wouldn't have studied it to the master's level if I didn't love it. I absolutely adore it. And so, as an atheist, that might sound surprising, but again, religion has an unbelievable impact in the world, and I think it would be remiss of any individual, frankly, to not have a good knowledge about something that impacts all of us. Even if you're not religious, the activities of religious people impact you, because we live in societies that are made up primarily of religious people. And so, look, I love studying religions, and I love specifically studying the arguments for God's existence. Why? Well, again, just because of my fascination with the subject. I love religion, and so naturally I love studying the arguments for God's existence. I think it's an absolutely riveting topic. But the other reason, guys, if I'm being brutally honest, the other reason I study the arguments for God's existence so thoroughly, the reason I spend much of my spare time reading about it and watching YouTube videos about it, is because I want to be the best philosopher, skeptic, and atheist I can be. If you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you'll know that I frequently have guests on. Guests who challenge my ideas and my principles and my beliefs. They hold my feet to the fire and keep me on my toes. And so it's incumbent upon me, if I want to be able to resist those challenges and defend my positions, it's incumbent upon me and it's necessary for me to learn and be the best student of religion I can be. And to that end, I spend much of my spare time, as I've already discussed, studying these ideas, studying the arguments for God's existence. And that brings me to the point of this video. While researching on YouTube just recently, I encountered a channel called What Would You Say? This channel is a Christian apologetics channel. Christian apologetics is the domain of theology which concerns itself with dealing with the objections leveled against Christianity. So on this channel, you'll find many videos that deal with atheistic and skeptical critiques of Christianity. And one such video is going to be the meat and potatoes of this particular discussion. The video is titled, "There's No Evidence That God Exists." And so, if you'll permit me, we're going to watch this video together, and I'm going to offer my critique of the arguments that are offered in this video. And to be clear, and before we go any further, these critiques are not personal. In fact, I think this is an awesome channel, and I'm going to include the link in the description below, and I recommend you go and check it out. They've got a massive following. They're a far larger channel than mine. And what's more, they create brilliant content. The videos are incredibly well produced. And yeah, they're just awesome. So when I critique the video we're about to watch here together, please understand that I'm critiquing their ideas. I'm not critiquing them as creators, because as creators and from one creator to another, I think their channel is absolutely brilliant. And if they ever do watch this video, guys, can I just say, keep doing what you're doing, because you keep atheists like myself on his toes. And that's all I've ever wanted, really. It's silly to me to choose weak opponents. It's silly to me to choose bad arguments and knock them down and then declare victory. I want to deal with the most robust arguments that the theistic community has to offer. And some of those arguments are contained within this very video I'm about to critique. So if you're ready to engage in that critique, buckle up and let's jump right into it, my friends. I hope you enjoyed the video.
In a conversation about faith with a skeptic, they may say, "I can't make myself believe something if there's no evidence. And there's no evidence God exists." What would you say?
I would say you're spot on. There's no good evidence that God exists, and I fully agree with your video thus far, my friends. End of video. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry, that was a cheap tactic. Let's continue with the video.
Evidence comes in different forms. Imagine you returned home from a night out to find the kitchen garbage turned over, trash strewn about, and your shoes chewed up. Meanwhile, your dog is sleeping quietly in the other room. There are some things you know and some things you don't know. Unfortunately, you never set up your surveillance camera, so you don't have any direct evidence. But everything you see suggests that your dog misbehaved before falling asleep. Is it possible that your neighbor came over and messed up your house? Yes, but unless you have an unusual neighbor, it's not going to be the best explanation.
Yes, I agree. The best explanation is probably that the dog is the one who messed up your kitchen. But do you know why? Well, first of all, we know that dogs exist. There is irrefutable evidence that dogs exist. I have petted dogs, I have owned dogs, I see people walking their dogs, and we also have very good evidence about dog behavior. We know that dogs, when left on their own, are likely, in some cases at least, maybe you've got a very well-behaved dog. Let me rephrase. We know that it's possible for a dog, when it's left on its own, to mess up the kitchen. And upon investigating the kitchen, yes, we don't have CCTV footage of the dog actually committing the act, but there will be trace evidence that the dog is the one that committed the act. We might see chew marks on the furniture that are consistent with the jawline of the dog. We might find the dog's fur. The dog may have urinated or left its feces behind. So the reason we know that the dog is the best explanation is because there is an embarrassment of evidence that the dog is the best explanation. Now, I haven't watched this video before. I'm honestly critiquing this live, and so I don't know where they're going with this exactly, but I think I could hazard a guess. What he's going to suggest is that there is trace evidence in the universe that God has left behind that allows us to conclude in a similar fashion to the dog being responsible for the kitchen despite not having direct evidence. We can conclude that God is responsible for the universe despite not having direct evidence. The difference is no one has ever demonstrated that a God exists. What would you think if I said to you that it's a leprechaun who messed up the kitchen? Remember, we have no evidence of leprechauns. What would you think of me if I suggested it was a leprechaun? What if among the rubble of the kitchen, among the mess that was left behind, I find a gold coin? Right? That's consistent with leprechaun mythology. Now suddenly it's a leprechaun that destroyed the kitchen. You would rightly call me a lunatic if I were to seriously suggest that as an explanation. And you'd say that for a number of reasons. First, it doesn't matter that there's a gold coin that's consistent with leprechaun mythology, because consistency is irrelevant. What matters is what you can demonstrate. Can you establish a causal link? Can I establish a causal link between leprechauns and what happened in the kitchen? Of course I can't. And what's more, there's no evidence that leprechauns not only don't exist, there's not even evidence that it's possible that leprechauns exist. And so if I suggested that a leprechaun was responsible for messing up the kitchen, you'd think that I was insane. Or at the very least, you'd think that I was holding an irrational or foolish belief. And you'd be completely justified in that conclusion. So this is just a guess, but I can only assume that that's where the video is going. So if you're ready, let's cautiously proceed and see if indeed I'm correct about what the guy is going to claim about the universe. Let's check it out.
Now, if we look for the best explanation for the world we live in, here's what we find. First, God is the best explanation of the origin of the universe.
Is he though? Is he really? Are you sure about that? Before I dismiss your claim, I guess I better be charitable enough to listen to how you're going to justify it, but we're not off to a good start here, I suspect.
In the past, it was believed that the universe was eternal. But today, theists and atheists alike agree that there was a beginning when matter, energy, space, and time came into being.
No. We don't agree on that. Now, before I say anything on this point, can I just explain and clarify that I'm not speaking on behalf of all atheists. There might very well be atheists who have become convinced that the universe has a beginning. I'm not one of them. Does that mean I believe that the past is infinite? No. My answer is I don't know whether or not the universe had a beginning or an infinite past. I do not know. And more to the point, there is no scientific consensus on this matter either. Just take a look at the work of the theoretical physicist Sean Carroll. And please don't misunderstand, dear listener, I'm not about to make an argument from authority. Sean Carroll is just articulating the evidence and the lack of scientific consensus. If you want to read up on this matter, please be my guest. But there is no scientific consensus on the origin of the universe and whether or not it had a finite beginning or an infinite past. The past could well be infinite. Now, some people might suggest, oh, that's impossible. The past couldn't be infinite. But why would that be impossible? Why is that impossible? Some people suggest it's impossible because it creates paradoxes. But those paradoxes only emerge if you treat infinity as a quantity rather than a description of an unending series. Let me give you an analogy. Zeno's paradox is probably the best way of explaining this. Zeno's paradox is the idea that if I fire an arrow from its destination point towards a bullseye, before it gets to the bullseye, it has to travel halfway. But then before it gets halfway, it has to travel halfway to the halfway point. In other words, a quarter of the way. But before it gets a quarter of the way, it has to travel halfway between a quarter and the origin and so on. If you keep doing that, what you realize is that it's actually infinitely divisible. Just think of any number, 10 for example. If I half it, I get 5. If I half 5, I get 2.5. If I half 2.5, etc., etc. What you realize is there's no point where I can stop halving the numbers. Think of the smallest number imaginable. I mean, if the number was 0.000000000 another million zeros and then a 1, that number could still be halved. Numbers are infinitely divisible. And so if the arrow going towards the bullseye has to travel halfway to begin with, but before it gets halfway, it has to travel halfway between halfway and so on and so forth, you end up with a paradox. How does the arrow ever get to its destination? There's an infinity of space between the origin and the destination. And yet we know in reality that the arrow does reach its destination. Things do reach their destinations. People get in their cars and go to work. People get in planes and fly to other countries. I walked from the living room to this room to make this video. This video has a beginning, and in a few minutes, it will have an end when you get to the end of it. And I hope you do, by the way. And when you do, don't forget to drop a like. Sorry, I couldn't resist a little plug. My point is this, guys. Infinity produces paradox. Infinities produce mathematical paradoxes. So even though there's a paradox in how the arrow gets to the bullseye, we know that the arrow does in fact get to the bullseye, even though the mathematics predicts an infinity between the origin and the end point. And so if you're going to suggest that an infinite past means that, as some people claim, means that we could never get to the present, you are making the same mistake that Zeno's paradox makes. You are using mathematics inappropriately. And so, guys, the idea that an infinite past is paradoxical is not clear to me. The past might very well be infinite. And if you think that that is completely anathema to your intuitions, how does proposing an infinite God solve that problem? Seriously? No. An infinite past is ridiculous. That's completely not intuitive at all. So, no, the past is finite. The universe had a beginning, and that's it. And the explanation of the universe is an infinite God. If you can't see the hypocrisy there, then I can't help you. I've had this out in the comment section with people before on other videos, and this guy said, oh yeah, but, you know, God is... the explanation. An infinite past is ridiculous. God must be the first mover, the prime mover. And then I said, but isn't God infinite? Aren't you making the exact same mistake? Oh, no. The explanation for God's existence is contained within himself. Oh boy, isn't that convenient? Isn't that convenient? And in any case, that's just an assertion. And as I frequently say, in the words of Christopher Hitchens, that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed as such. But guys, this video is just fundamentally wrong when it says that atheists and theists agree that the universe had a finite beginning. We don't agree. And even though I don't speak on behalf of all atheists, I have spoken to numerous atheists who would say what I would say, which is I don't know whether the universe had a beginning. I don't know whether or not the past is infinite. I have no idea. It might be the case that our universe was birthed out of a larger universe. There might be a multiverse. There are so many options here. The point is that there is no scientific consensus, and in my view, it's completely inappropriate and just incorrect to suggest that there is now some kind of consensus on this matter and that we've come to the conclusion that the universe has a beginning. We just don't know. But look, let's keep going with the video and see what comes up next.
Denying a creator, atheists are required to believe that everything we see came out of nothing.
Goodness, guys, this could be a long video. Every few seconds I'm having to pause it here and offer a critique. No, atheists are not obliged to believe that everything came out of nothing. Absolutely not. Denying a creator doesn't mean that I'm committed to the idea that the universe sprang out of nothing. I'm not committed to that idea at all. As I've already discussed, it might just be the case that the past is infinite. Of course, this creator has already dismissed that option because they've erroneously concluded that we all agree that the past is finite and that the universe had a beginning. But that's just not true. So no, denying a creator does not logically entail that I adopt the position that the universe sprang into existence out of nothing. I don't know how the universe came into existence. We know that the Big Bang is the origin of our local universe, but we don't know what caused the Big Bang. We have no idea. We can't assess it. We don't know. We just don't know, right? It might be the case that God caused a Big Bang, or it might be the case that the Big Bang was preceded by a parent universe that birthed the daughter universe. It might be the case that before the Big Bang, there was another Big Bang and another Big Bang and another Big Bang, and that the past is infinite. I don't know, guys. I do not know. What I do know is that I am absolutely not committed to the notion that everything came into existence out of nothing. So this allegation is false.
Experience and science tell us that something can't come from nothing. We have never seen it happen. But here we are. What's the best explanation? That something came from nothing? Or that something outside our universe caused the universe to exist?
So yes, experience and science does in fact tell us that something can't come from nothing. We have never found an example of something coming from nothing. But so what? So what? In our reality, things don't come from nothing. Sure thing. But this is just an example of the black swan fallacy. What he's saying is, I've never seen a black swan, therefore black swans don't exist. Which is fallacious. That is absolutely fallacious. To rephrase it, what he's saying is, I've never seen something come from nothing, therefore something can't come from nothing. Now, that's intuitively appealing, because our reality operates on the law of cause and effect. The idea of something coming from nothing would mean that something happened without a cause, and that does violate our intuitions. But that's because we live in a reality that is governed by cause and effect. The universe may very well have sprung out of nothing. Now, again, I'm not claiming that I know that, but if the universe came into existence and in that moment the laws of physics were birthed, why would we expect the law of cause and effect to extend beyond the laws of physics? Before the laws of physics existed, maybe things could come into existence out of nothing. You see, guys, we're talking here about very complex cosmology, physics, and science. And the key point is that we can't rule anything out. Show me a nothing. You see, that's the problem. We don't have nothing to investigate. We can't have a nothing in the lab. If I have a beaker with nothing in it, there's not really nothing in it. There are microscopic particles in it. There's air in it and so forth. And even if we create a vacuum, that's not nothing either, because there's still space in there. You see, guys, we don't have a nothing to investigate. And it might very well be the case that if you really had nothing, let's assume the universe did come into existence out of nothing. Maybe it's the case that if you truly have nothing, that it's possible, because the law of cause and effect doesn't apply, maybe it's possible for something to come into existence out of nothing. And that's why this argument is inappropriate, guys. You cannot extend our understanding about cause and effect and the laws of physics into a domain where those laws of physics do not apply. You just can't do that. And if you do, be prepared to be challenged by skeptics such as myself. The universe could very well have come into existence out of nothing, and there is nothing about that claim which is irrational or illogical. It only violates our intuition because once the laws of physics are in operation, something coming to existence out of nothing seems incredibly unlikely, if not impossible. So I hope that addresses this point. Please don't fall for this mistake. Don't fall for this assertion that something can't possibly come from nothing. That's only the case if we're currently being governed by the existing laws of cause and effect and the laws of physics. Those laws, we have no good reason to assume that those laws extend beyond the boundaries of our universe. And whatever did create our universe obviously resides beyond it. And if beyond the walls of our universe, the laws of physics and the law of cause and effect doesn't apply, there is absolutely no reason to assume that our inductive conclusion that something can come from nothing actually applies. But let's move on.
In any other context, we recognize that something can't come from nothing. We should in this context as well. A creator is the best explanation for the fact that the universe exists at all.
So that's just an assertion. All of the mistakes that he's made thus far mean that we can't take this point seriously. And even if none of those things were mistakes, if it was the case that something indeed cannot come from nothing, and that the universe actually does have a finite beginning, that there's a real origin, even if I accepted all of that, the universe has a beginning, something can't come from nothing. Even if I accepted all of that, it still wouldn't be fair to conclude, therefore there's a creator. It just wouldn't be fair to conclude that. Again, maybe our universe was birthed out of a parent universe. Maybe the past is infinite. There are other options on offer here, and I'm not suggesting that those options are likely. I'm not suggesting I believe them. Again, to reiterate, my position on the origin of the universe is, I don't know. And what I'm suggesting to you is that this gentleman doesn't know either. He thinks he does. I'm not calling him disingenuous. I just think he's wrong.
Second, God is the best explanation for the fine-tuned universe. Not only does the universe exist, but it contains a delicate balance of conditions that not only allow matter to exist, but life to be possible. From the strength of gravity, to the size of the moon, to the tilt of the earth, hundreds of conditions had to be just perfect at exactly the same time for life on Earth to be possible. Now, what's the best explanation for this fine-tuned environment?
So this is the classic fine-tuning argument, and it's very persuasive if you're not familiar with the flaws. So he lists a whole load of boundary conditions that are necessary for life to exist. However, those conditions are only necessary for life as we know it to exist. If the conditions were different, how are we to know that another form of life couldn't have emerged? Right? So guys, this is just an assertion, right? The assertion is that without the conditions being as they currently are, life couldn't have come about. But that is just an assertion. He can't know that. All we know, because we have a sample size of one universe, is that the existing conditions were satisfactory for the proliferation and production of life. Had those conditions been different? We can't say. We don't know. Maybe it's possible that other life could have emerged. I've read that silicon could have served as the basis for life. Now, I'm not a scientist, so don't take that to the bank and catch it. I'm just telling you what I've read in the past. But the point is that other life was possible, even if those conditions were different. So there's a huge problem here, but the problem is even deeper than that. Is the universe really fine-tuned for life? We haven't found life anywhere else in the universe. Now, we haven't searched much of it, and it's incomprehensibly large. Maybe the universe is teeming with life. I don't know. But there doesn't appear to be any life in it yet, right? Now, if we find some, great. But that wouldn't mean that suddenly the universe is completely hospitable to life. That's not necessarily the case. It might be the case that much of the universe is hostile to life. A lot like much of the planet Earth is hostile to life. We can't live under the millions of gallons of ocean that exist on this planet. We can't live on some of the hottest climates on this planet. We can't live in some of the coldest climates on this planet. And even in the places where we can live, there are all sorts of things in reality that are trying to boot us out of it. Disease, famine, hurricanes, volcanoes, etc. How fine-tuned for life is this planet really? It doesn't really make sense. And the other problem here with fine-tuning is that the creator, essentially, the creator of the video, that is, not God, essentially has this argument backwards. The planet isn't fine-tuned for us. We adapted to the planet, guys, to the tune of the death of millions of our species, while we adapted and evolved to survive. Nature is harsh. It's survival of the fittest. It's that simple. We adapted to this planet. The planet didn't adapt to us. Douglas Adams is the one who nailed this with an absolutely beautiful analogy, which I'm going to read to you right now. I'm not going to try to recapitulate Douglas Adams' words, because I can just read his own words and you'll get the point. This is just fantastic. I love it. Check it out. This is rather as if you imagine a puddle waking up one morning and thinking, this is an interesting world I find myself in. An interesting hole I find myself in. Fits me rather neatly, doesn't it? In fact, it fits me staggeringly well. Must have been made to have me in it. This is such a powerful idea that as the sun rises in the sky and the air heats up, and as gradually the puddle gets smaller and smaller, frantically hanging on to the notion that everything's going to be all right, because this world was meant to have him in it, was built to have him in it. So the moment he disappears catches him rather by surprise. I think this may be something we need to be on the watch out for. Oh my God, Douglas Adams, you poet. This is exactly the mistake that the creator of this video is making. He is the puddle in the hole, thinking that this life, that this universe, that this environment is so remarkably well created for him, so finely tuned, it fits him perfectly. He has made the mistake of assuming that the whole was designed for him, rather than him evolving over hundreds of thousands of years to adapt to this environment. It's precisely the opposite way around, my friend. You've got it wrong, I'm afraid.
No one looks at a watch and assumes it was created by an explosion at a watch factory. No one sees graffiti on a wall and assumes a paint truck was involved in an accident. When we see evidence of design, we assume there was a designer, because logic and experience tell us that order doesn't come from disorder.
These analogies are spectacularly weak. The famous Paley's watchmaker argument, and he produces a variation of that with the graffiti on the wall. Yes, you're right. If I see graffiti on the wall, I don't assume that a paint truck crashed. When I happen across a watch, I don't assume that the watch was randomly assembled by some abstract process. Of course not. Why would I? All of the evidence is to the contrary. We know that watches are designed by human beings. You can go and meet a watchmaker. You can speak to a watchmaker. You can watch them making a watch. You see people wearing watches all the time. Never once have we ever observed a watch assembling randomly. Similarly with the graffiti on the wall. When I see a patterned painting, a work of art on a building, all of the evidence suggests that graffiti is produced by graffiti artists and not by random chance. We don't recognize that these things are designed with an appeal to their complexity. We recognize that they're designed because there's evidence of design. Show me the evidence of design for the universe. You don't get to appeal to the complexity of the universe and allege that that complexity is best explained by a creator. Complex things can form through completely unguided, blind, naturalistic processes. Look at a snowflake. The intricacy of a snowflake is something to behold. You can look at a snowflake under a microscope. Trust me, look it up, Google it. It is an absolute marvel to witness. And yet a snowflake crystallizes in the air according to the laws of physics. It is a completely naturalistic occurrence. It has absolutely nothing to do with a creator. You cannot draw an analogy between a watch and the universe because you don't know that the universe was designed. Its complexity is not necessarily an earmark of design. That's not how this works. The universe, as David Hume put it, might be better conceptualized as a vast floating vegetable. in that it may very well be a naturally occurring phenomena. But again, I don't know that. It could be the case that the universe was designed by a creator, but I can't just believe that because the universe is complex. Complexity doesn't get you to where you want to go. It just doesn't. You still have all of your argument ahead of you. You might convince people who are not well informed on the philosophy of the arguments for God's existence, but you cannot pull the wool over my eyes. Complexity is not how we determine design. End of story.
If you want to believe God doesn't exist, you will find a reason.
Oh, see, the video was well-meaning up until now, and the arguments presented were fallacious in my opinion, but still interesting, well-presented and so forth. This is where we have to part ways and where I have to get real with you. So he says in the video, if you want to believe God doesn't exist, you will find a reason. The implication there is quite clear. He's implying that atheists are just dishonest or stubborn, and that we just really don't want to believe in God, and so we're just going to find a reason. That, I'm sorry to say, is despicable. And this is where my cordiality ends. I'm not going to listen to that crap, and it is crap. It's complete nonsense. First of all, we can't choose our beliefs. If I wanted to believe something, I wouldn't be able to make myself believe it. That's not how beliefs work. Beliefs are not choices. If I wanted to believe in God, I couldn't make myself. It's not possible to make yourself believe something. If that was the case, you could choose not to believe in God right now, but that's not how it works. Becoming convinced is a deterministic phenomenon. When we become convinced, it happens outside of our control. The reason I don't believe in God is because none of the arguments that have been presented for God's existence have persuaded me. It's not because I'm just looking for a reason not to believe. And how dare you even imply that that might be the case?
You might also convince yourself that your neighbor, and not your dog, messed up your house. But that doesn't make it the best explanation for what you know.
No, I'm not going to convince myself that my neighbour is the one who messed up my kitchen. I'm just going to follow the evidence where it leads. And in this case, the evidence leads in the direction of the dog. In the case of the universe, the evidence is not sufficient to lead in the direction of a creator. So if anybody is just forcing themselves or wanting to believe something out of anyone, it's you.
Let's review. Next time someone tells you there is no evidence for God, remember these two things. God is the best explanation for the origin of the universe.
No, he's not.
If God didn't make the universe, that means it made itself. And that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't mean that the universe created itself. That is a false dichotomy. The two options aren't God or the universe created itself. That is ridiculous. There are so many options, and there might very well be options that we haven't discovered yet. The universe may have been birthed out of a larger universe. We may be part of a multiverse. The universe may have always existed with an infinity before it. You cannot just set up a false dichotomy and expect us all to swallow it. That is nonsense.
God is the best explanation for the fine-tuned universe.
No, God isn't. You haven't even demonstrated that a God existed. Sorry. This is just not going to cut the mustard.
The universe is filled with intelligence, order, and evidence of design.
Yes, that universe that's going to end in a heat death. So filled with order. Why didn't I see it before you did?
In every other area, when we see design, we assume there was a designer. It's the best explanation here as well.
Yes, when there's evidence of design, we infer a designer. But where's the evidence of design in the universe? You haven't provided any. I'm sorry. This is a dead argument. And that brings us to the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to see me deconstruct more apologetics videos and offer my critique, I would absolutely love to do that. If you have a video that you want me to deconstruct specifically, please link it in the comments below. Albeit YouTube tends to remove links when you post them in comments, so perhaps that's not the best option. So it might be better to contact me on Twitter the Magic Skeptic on Twitter, same spelling as on the YouTube channel, or follow me on Instagram and send me a private message there, again under the Magic Skeptic there as well. So yeah, just send me a video if you want me to critique it and deconstruct it and explain my thoughts on it. I would love to do that. I've really enjoyed critiquing this video, and even though I got a little bit heated there towards the end, please know that I still have an immense amount of goodwill for the channel that I'm critiquing in this video. And again, they're amazing creators. The link for their channel will be in the description below if you want to go and check it out. And other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please do consider dropping a like on the video. That helps me out enormously. And if you've been enjoying my content more generally, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you do, don't forget to check the bell notification icon. That way you'll be able to stay up to date with all things on the channel, and you'll even be notified as and when my latest videos go live. Thanks again for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. All the best. Bye-bye.